Welcome into Birds Huddle, powered by PointsBet, along with our Eagles insider, Mr. Reuben Frank. I'm Danny Pommells. We appreciate you joining us. Reuben, you've been covering the Eagles camp since the 80s. How excited do you get each year as camp gets underway?
This is great because we have Johnny Airport. Now we have Danny Amtrak right here. So we're ready to go. No, it's, look, I'm going to drive up to Lehigh tomorrow morning.
Yeah,
I might drive to Westchester and then up to Lehigh and then to the NovaCare. This is where it all begins. And this is where they start becoming a team. You got a lot of new players, new faces, new schemes, people in new roles. And over the next few weeks, we're going to see it all kind of come together. So it's an exciting time of year.
Yeah, make sure to check out Ruben's work on NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com and the Eagle Eye podcast. That brings us to Ruben's three-point stance, though, presented by your Mercedes. Your first stance, the hype around this season is justified. You believe that what's going to come from this Eagles team will be living up to the expectations?
Well, yeah, depending what the expectations are. I think they're going to be very good. There's really no reason if they stay healthy, and that's obviously the caveat for every team, but they've really addressed all the areas that they had to address. Howie had a heck of an offseason. They needed a cornerback, you go get James Bradbury. They needed linebackers, you get Nakobe Dean and Kazir White. Need pass rush. Who better to get than Hassan Reddick from Temple? You need everything they need. You need depth at defensive tackle. You get Jordan Davis in here. You need an elite wide receiver, and they went out and got that too in a way that nobody really saw coming. I think Howie crushed this offseason. They didn't get a punter. They didn't get a big-time safety. There's not a team out there that's got an all-pro at every position, but I really think that Howie did a great job addressing what he had to address, and they start camp with a roster that I think is capable of winning a lot of games, making a deep postseason run.
All right, we've seen some lofty expectations for this team over the years for sure. How do these expectations this season specifically stack up? Highest since they've won the Super Bowl, you think?
Yeah, there's no question about it. And 2018, I think everybody, because that always happens with a team coming off a Super Bowl, the expectations are astronomical. And they did make the playoffs. And that's they actually had a pretty good season for a team coming off a Super Bowl. They won a playoff game in Chicago. But yeah, this is certainly as high as it's been. There have been some years, when Chip was here that first year, I think there was a lot of spotlight on the Eagles just because of how different they were and how unique a coach Chip was. Turned out to be a disaster pretty quickly, but right. That first year was exciting. That stretch when Andy was here, when they were good every year from 2000 to 2004, 2006. I mean, expectations were always high, but for a new coach, a young quarterback who's kind of unproven, expectations are astronomical for this football team.
All right, one stance down. Let's get to your second stance. Aside from Jalen Hurts, the Eagles who most need to make a leap is Miles Sanders. So we're talking about the backfield and where Miles Sanders needs to kind of improve.
Yeah, and I think Miles Sanders has been a very good running back when he's been healthy. He's been he's been hurt a lot the last 2 years. Hasn't been able to stay on the field. His yards per run is one of the highest in NFL history. He's 8th highest among running backs with 500 career carries. But what is he? We don't really know yet what he is. And he's a guy who is not elite. He's not a top 10 back, but potentially he is. And I think he's got to show this year that he can make that jump. He hasn't had a 1,000-yard season. Now, some of it is the coach's fault because whether it was Doug his rookie year or Nick, he hasn't had enough carries. But I really believe that Miles Sanders, in order to stay here, he's got to show that he can make that jump from pretty good running back who has some great games to an elite running back, and that's the challenge for him. He's never had that stretch of a bunch of games in a row that really wows you, like Shady did, like Brian Westbrook did, like all the greats do. So that's the next step for him.
Yeah, in a league that kind of devalues the running back position a bit, Sanders is in a contract year. So how could that factor into his play on the field, do you think?
Yeah, that's the big question. There's a lot of guys on this team that are in contract years, and I think Miles, with his injuries, I don't think he's going to be getting a huge contract unless he has a massive year. I do think the Eagles can get him fairly cheap if he's healthy throughout camp, if he starts the season healthy, if he has maybe 4 to 6 big games early in the season, you lock him up at a reasonable price. I would do it. He's a really good player. But if he's hurt again, if there's issues, if there's consistency problems, then I think he's going to walk. And, you can find running backs. And I think Gainwell's really good. I think Boston Scott's really good. So I think Miles has to prove he can be consistent, he can be productive, and he can be healthy if he wants to stay here.
Your final stance, Rube. The Eagles could use another running back. The Birds worked out former Cowboy Jaquan Hardy, but did not sign him. Meanwhile, the guy everyone expects to end up here, who just somehow finds his way to the Eagles, is Jordan Howard. He's working out for the Saints. So how does that play out? Do they need like kind of a thunder and lightning approach here with Miles Sanders and maybe a bigger back?
Well, I really like Gainwell. I thought he showed he's a very, very good receiver out of the backfield and a decent runner as well.
Yeah.
Finds the end zone. I mean, he's a guy who had
carried the load really well.
7 touchdowns
in
limited action. In Boston, I think Boston's really good too as a backup running back, a spot starter. Both those guys have a nose for the end zone. They have Jason Huntley as well, who, he's in his 3rd year, so he's been here. He knows the offense. I think they can trust him to play a minor role if he needs to. He's quick. Another good receiver as well. So you're certainly always looking to upgrade, but I think they like what they have right now.
Interesting. Another former Eagles running back making news. Corey Clement just signed with the Ravens. And are you surprised he hasn't had more success following his rookie year? He kind of, peaked with the Super Bowl season.
I wouldn't say he hasn't had success. Here's a kid who's going into his 6th year in the NFL as an undrafted free agent out of Glassboro Bulldogs. And he's going into year 6. He played a lot last year in Dallas on special teams. He had like 300 snaps. I think the Super Bowl was the anomaly. I think if you look at his career, how many undrafted kids are playing 6 years in the NFL? Or he might end up playing 8 or 10 years. So I think he's had a terrific career. He had 3 of the biggest plays in Eagles history.
I didn't think he caught that pass. I'll just say it on record. I didn't think he caught that in the back of the end zone.
Super slow it down. It was an incredible throw and one of the most amazing catches I've ever seen. And then he had the 55-yarder to set up the Philly special, which he started. So 3 incredible plays in that game. A 2nd longest catch ever by a running back in a Super Bowl. So I think he's always got a place etched in Eagles history. And I think if you look what he's accomplished, he's had a really good career for an undrafted kid.